Designers can achieve big reductions in the embodied carbon in buildings. Amy Hattan, Thornton Tomasetti's Corporate Responsibility Officer, is talking with in-house experts about how they're reducing the effect of buildings on climate change. Here's how Embodied Carbon is a production of Thornton Tomasetti.
Hi, and welcome to episode 12 of Here's How Embodied Carbon. This series explores how engineers and designers can fight climate change by reducing the embodied carbon, or the emissions associated with building materials, in the structures they design. I'm Amy Hattan. At Thornton Tomasetti, a multidisciplinary engineering and consulting firm, we've been focused on embodied carbon for over a decade, and we're channeling all of our capabilities to tackle climate change. I'm talking with colleagues about how they're achieving reductions in greenhouse gas emissions on their projects. Today, I'm talking with Amanda Garvey, a vice president in our sustainability and resilience practice. Amanda sits in our Portland, Maine office, and she has helped many colleges and universities in New England and elsewhere to meet their sustainability action plans and institutional commitments. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Amy.
It's always fun to talk about what higher education institutions are doing around sustainability because they're often ahead of the curve and are willing to implement sustainable strategies before they've been adopted across the building sector. In your work in this sector, have you seen much interest in embodied carbon reduction?
Yes. Embodied carbon reduction is a route colleges and universities can take to demonstrate leadership and sustainability. A lot of schools have committed to achieving carbon neutrality, and the interest is growing for whole life carbon, which is a reduction in both operational and embodied carbon. Reducing Scope 3 emissions is a concept that is getting more and more traction within higher education as well. Scope 3 accounts for emissions that an institution is responsible for indirectly, such as the emissions from suppliers of products purchased. This can include a massive amount of building materials that are used in campus buildings. Therefore, if a college or university is trying to reduce its Scope 3 emissions, looking to the embodied carbon of its buildings is a good first step.
That makes sense. Colleges and universities have many standards and commitments within the higher education community that guide their approach to campus sustainability. Considering that campuses can have a large impact on embodied carbon, are we seeing more guidance for reduction in the standards?
Higher education institutions do follow certain tools and standards that currently have varying degrees of attention to and influence over embodied carbon. Many schools have signed Second Nature's climate commitment, which doesn't specifically address embodied carbon reduction. But the commitment does require a climate action plan, and that helps to drive discussions and urgency about carbon reduction overall. The Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, or ASHE, has a rating system called STARS, where schools report on how they're doing on sustainability from a holistic perspective for their campus. This includes buildings, but also the academic curriculum, transportation, purchasing, and other areas. It's very broad, but there are a couple of building performance requirements that could potentially drive some conversations around embodied carbon, although the current focus is operational carbon.
And what about LEED?
Schools that are pursuing LEED certifications for their buildings as part of their sustainability plans often want to secure the LEED points associated with Building Lifecycle Impact Reduction Credit, which is an option for design teams to use whole building lifecycle assessments, or LCAs, to demonstrate embodied carbon reduction for the project's structure and enclosure. Another certification body that's growing in popularity within colleges and universities is the International Living Future Institute, or ILFI. It requires an embodied carbon reduction of 20% or more for primary materials in the building project, which includes the structure and enclosure. They also have certification programs that require embodied carbon thresholds, low carbon interior finished materials, A5 tracking for construction-related emissions, and advocacy for environmental product declarations, or EPDs.
LEED and Living Building Challenge have been mentioned before in this podcast series as helping to turn attention to embodied carbon. But considering that colleges and universities are usually making waves and not just riding them, do you see these institutions going above and beyond the certification programs? How are they addressing embodied carbon on their campuses?
In our work, we've seen institutions approach this question at 3 broad levels. The first level is about measuring embodied carbon. It's not about trying to make drastic changes yet or addressing changes to standards of practice, but it's familiarizing teams with the framework and thinking beyond operational carbon, which is where the focus has been for the past 30 years. It includes specification, reporting, and establishing baselines. Universities and colleges at this stage can require their design teams to report on embodied carbon, target compliance with LEED, life cycle assessment credit, or both.
Do you have any suggestions for an institution in this position?
Getting structural engineers involved early in a project has a huge impact at this stage because of what is being measured. The first step is to report the global warming potential on the heavy hitter materials in the structural system, like steel, concrete, aluminum, and insulation. We can quantify a large percentage of the embodied carbon in a project just by looking at these few materials. We also suggest to our higher education clients and design teams that they have conversations with their suppliers. They need to ensure that they can procure materials that will lower embodied carbon and that they're not excluding local suppliers.
If a school wants to go beyond compliance and toward achieving large reductions in carbon in their buildings, what is the next step?
We see them evaluate and compare at the next level. This may require the AE team to provide 2 to 3 structural and architectural concept designs, often including a mass timber option, so they can compare opportunities for embodied carbon reduction. These schools typically want to bring a team with experience in designing low-carbon buildings. At this level, whole building life cycle assessment can be a useful tool to inform discussions during early design stages.
Okay, so the second level considers embodied carbon reduction and comparisons between different designs. If a school is really inspired to demonstrate its commitment to carbon reduction, what else should they consider?
The third level is designing to a target. This can take place once an institution has built out their database so they can track and compare embodied carbon data. At this point, they can set targets for global warming potential. These targets can be put directly into their specifications and key requirements for teams. Some schools are using the Carbon Leadership Forum's embodied carbon baselines as a starting point and then adapting to regional implications.
Where in this scale are most colleges and universities right now? Are they just measuring embodied carbon, including it as a design consideration, or actively setting targets and keeping their design consultants and suppliers accountable?
In the Northeast, we are just starting to see institutions beginning to track and report on embodied carbon for their buildings. There are a few at the second level, but many institutions are just dipping their toes into embodied carbon right now, performing LCAs, tracking embodied carbon content, and aligning with third-party standards such as ILFI or LEED.
Since it's clear that higher education institutions could make a big dent in their Scope 3 emissions by considering embodied carbon in their building material choices, what more would you like to see happening in this sector?
Schools can use their influence to drive market transformation. It would be great to see institutions coming together to establish standardized embodied carbon reporting metrics and enhance existing standards to include both embodied carbon reporting and reduction requirements.
Yes, it sounds like there's an opportunity for some interesting conversations among higher education institutions to set high standards that could push the envelope on this important topic. Thanks, Amanda. Folks, there's more. Follow Thornton Tomasetti for more episodes of Here's How Embodied Carbon.